Welcome everyone back to another episode of Behind the Hive. Is your Varroa IPM working for you? We have created a 5-part series to help beekeepers answer that question. In this 5-part series, we'll be discussing the following topics: threshold versus goal-driven IPM, protecting populations, where are your Varroa and viruses, and the focus on fall treatments. So I'm joined today again by Dr. Heather Broccard-Bell, and she's going to be sharing with us some of her research. What we're seeing happening in the field is a lot of beekeepers, they're constantly piggybacking and layering Varroa treatments in their hives, sometimes right through the entire year. And I don't think that's good for anybody. So what we need to do is come up with a simple IPM that's actually built and designed for beekeepers.
Just to give a little background on the IPM model and how it came to be used within the beekeeping industry. The IPM model was originated actually for use with plant pest management, so a pretty different system to beekeeping. And because historically beekeeping was considered from a regulatory perspective in the same broad universe as plants, when Varroa started to emerge as a major global pest in the 80s and 90s, the powers that be decided that they would apply this IPM model to beekeeping.
Certainly within Canada, a lot of the regulatory bodies that handled the beekeeping side of it were piggybacked under horticulture.
Yeah.
And so, for example, in the eastern provinces, blueberries were very important due to pollination of blueberries. And so the provincial apiarist was really tied to keeping a healthy honeybee population for the plant products.
A threshold-based treatment model there makes sense because you don't want to be putting extra inputs in if you don't need to. However, unfortunately for us, in honeybees, the Varroa infestations don't really work that way. So regardless of what treatments we apply or how often we apply them, there will almost always be some level of Varroa in the colony. So it's never the case that it's zero. Treating based on a threshold model is reactive rather than proactive. So we know that Varroa is always going to be in the hives. Does it make sense to wait until they've reached a certain threshold to do treatments? And it's interesting because even those thresholds, the numbers have changed over the years. They've changed depending on the location that you are, which suggests that maybe they're not doing what they're intended to do, which is actually lead to healthier honeybee colonies.
Yeah. We need to go back to the basic biology of the honeybee, that it's a circannual superorganism where they have distinct populations of bees throughout the season, and that's what we're trying to protect. So when we look at our summer bees, they're the ones that bring in our crop and do all the pollination services. The winter bees may never even see a blossom. Like they could be born after the flowers are done blooming, and yet they're going to be the bees that'll be the spring, take the colony through until the spring. So instead of basing our treatments around Varroa populations, maybe we should base our treatments around honeybee populations. We think of the summer bee and the winter bee as the populations we're protecting. And then when do we time our treatment for best economic value as beekeepers? Because a lot of us earn a living from beekeeping. And so IPM should also be based on the profitability. So we have to minimize our inputs to have a good outcome, and our good outcome should be strong, healthy bee populations.
Absolutely. So I think that what we want to be doing is optimizing our treatments with the understanding that there's always going to be some level of Varroa. We can lessen the impact of Varroa by timing our treatments so that they coincide with what is going to work best for us in our particular region economically. So what is going to have the greatest amount of impact on fostering healthy summer populations and then also the overwintering population. So first, I just want to take us back to a graph that we actually already discussed in our spring treatment video, and this is the graph showing the mite fall on the sticky boards of treated versus untreated hives. So this is data from last year. We've got 2 treatment groups. We've got an untreated control that didn't have anything done to it except it was opened at the same time as the treatment group was. And then we have a treatment group, this yellow line here, which was treated with 2 strips of Formic Pro on May 16th. Now this is cumulative mite fall on sticky boards, so these are mites collected that fall out of the hive as they die. However, the difference between the untreated and the treated group here, when the Formicro is actually applied, you can't even really see that on here. So we talk about mites being hard to detect in the spring, and this is a real testament to that. Even though we've got a treatment in one of these groups and no treatment in the other group, the amount of mites falling on the sticky board earlier on the spring looks very similar. So there's not much difference there, but you can really see the difference start to emerge by the time you get to September. And the reason that I wanted to bring this graph up again is because we're talking about treatment timing and when is the optimal time to actually apply treatment in the fall now, not in the spring, to protect your winter bee population. Whereas in the spring, of course, we're trying to optimize honey production or whatever it is that we're doing with our hives in the summer. So we want to apply it early enough that we're not that the colonies are able to recover from whatever treatment effects there are, but also reduce their Varroa number and then optimize that honey production.
Right.
In the fall, when is the time that we want to apply it? To get in there before the hive is exposed to a high Varroa load, especially right during the production of those winter bees.
Right. Within my own output, we applied the treatment on May 9th. So we're trying to target that first half of May because that times well the colony reproduction phase of the operation. The beekeeper's year is actually 3 parts if we want to think of it as a whole. The first part is bees coming out of winter and then getting ready for the honey flow. And that's a mite management period that you want to get ahead of. The middle part is just your harvest of honey. And so that's where your efficiency in just getting the crop off, getting it processed, getting it in the drum, that's the second phase. And then the third phase is post-honey flow, where you're trying to bring your bees into fall in a healthy state to make it through into the next spring. And that's another mite management phase.
Another thing that I'd like to say about this graph as well, in terms of that, is if I had not done a treatment on May 16th, I would likely have had to have done some treatment in the middle of the season, which is not optimal because, yes, here at least, we're having to move a whole bunch of honey supers to get at that. Yeah. People don't like to be treating while there's a honey crop on there, even though we're allowed to. It's not ideal. Right. And it just adds a whole bunch of extra work, whereas if you treated early in the spring, you've minimized your mite population for this entire middle part, that whole productive part. Yeah. And you don't need to be messing with all that, and it's not interfering with honey production.
And it's not just the treatment, it's the monitoring. To get down, to do, say, an alcohol wash, you have to go down into the brood chamber and get to those young nurse bees that are just emerging in the prime of their lives, about to contribute economically, and then you shake 300 to 600 of them into an alcohol wash, kill them, and then shake them for mites. That's a lot of work to be doing right at the time of year when you should be just focused on harvesting your honey crop. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. People should monitor to a certain degree to make sure that their prior treatment has kept mites under control, but you shouldn't have to do it extensively at the time when you're trying to get your crop off.
Yeah.
So, however, if someone didn't treat in the spring, save your bees. You're still going to have to treat twice in the year, but that means you'll have to go to the work of treating early August, sometime midsummer, and then treat again come mid-September, or else you won't have adequate mite control to have a healthy colony going into winter.
Absolutely. This takes us back to this concept of IPM, which is where you're treating based on threshold. So you found a certain level of mites in your colony and you've decided that you wanted to treat. I did want to make the point that although we're not really advocating for that because we do feel that it's reactive, we do think that it's important to continue monitoring. Mm-hmm. So just so that you can have a feel for what's happening in your hives, and so that you can have a feel for if your previous treatments have worked. No Varroa treatment is 100% effective, and especially if you have had high levels, which high levels of Varroa mites are easier to detect. It's the low levels that really are problematic. So if you've had high levels and not knowing that and then applying a treatment and then thinking that it hasn't worked, well, if you didn't know what the levels were before, then you don't actually really know if it worked or
Sure.
not.
Yeah. Heather's work is now being shared with the larger beekeeping world. She has been invited to present some of her findings at the upcoming Apimondia in Copenhagen, and we look forward to seeing this data shared with the beekeeping world.
Yes, in fact, I'm also writing a manuscript for this, so that not only will you be able to see it at Copenhagen if you're there, but you'll be able to read about it in a journal at some point in the future, hopefully.
Thanks for watching another episode of Behind the Hive. Please feel free to add your questions or concerns in the comment section. Give us a like if you're enjoying these videos, and we look forward to being with you again in the future.